So I'm going to take that one step further. If we can say that, okay, maybe they're not cloud native, they're not ready for serverless or container. To the extent where you do need coverage and patching and vulnerability scanning in that arena, who are you looking to? We're seeing in our emerging technology survey companies like Sneak looking very, very strong. There's companies like Aqua and Apparetto that are out there. Are any of those names familiar with you?
Yeah, actually, we do use Aqua, for example. And there are other companies, right? So Palo Alto, for example, but
Twistlock,
Twistlock, and now it's called something else, right? So they all
Palo
have
Alto Prisma, they call it now.
The Prisma stuff. Yeah, we are also Palo Alto shop, but we deliberately chose the Aqua at that point in time, and we use Aqua, for example.
Yeah, I remember at the time when we were looking at container security, it was just going Aqua and Twistlock were really the two strongest, without a doubt. I was fortunate enough to do some meetings with the Twistlock founders, and they were incredibly impressive. And Palo Alto made a great acquisition there. I just want to allude, you did say earlier that some companies buy great technologies, but then just sort of leave them to flounder. Do you feel that way with Palo Alto as a roll-up security play?
I don't think so, but I worry when companies get too big, because they were, they were really good at one thing, and I'm using this as a history kind of thing, right? When Palo came in, they were really good at the firewalls. They changed their dynamics. They replaced a whole bunch of checkpoints, for example. I'm using this as an example. Mm-hmm. And they, it was that point in time that they were really good, and then they started acquiring. Are they good? I think they're getting there in many areas, but once you start acquiring, you have to wonder where that focus is and stuff like that. Some are very good. I mean, others are still catching up. And plus you have cloud native stuff as well, right? So, but today, everybody, I think digitizing, you got to take the best of breed. And that's why you might ask me, oh, why, if you have a big Palo shop, why wouldn't we use all Palo and the Prisma and all that stuff? That's the reason, because you're trying to be selective and,
well, there's a great theme here. So maybe I'll break this down a little bit if you don't mind, Les. So like you said, the Palo Alto, by far, they changed the firewall game. But now we have a company like Cloudflare, which started off as just doing CDN delivery, to the edge. Now they have web access firewalls that seem to be coming right at Palo Alto.
Yeah, exactly. Zscaler is doing that too, right?
Zscaler as well, right? Palo Alto had their connected internet gateway, and Zscaler came out in a more cloud native way. So it seems to you say, okay, we're a Palo shop because we're very large, and you probably have a ton of their firewalls still. But when it comes time for a secure gateway or a web access firewall, you're looking more to best of breed. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's true. Ideally, you want to go with the kind of cloud, the native cloud vendors. So it could be like the Microsoft, Google, AWS, or Ali for that matter, right? You want to go there because those guys, it's at the core. You hope that it's going to be as good, but you test at it before you get to the, taking it just to get a different point of view. And the other challenge with, getting digitized and, cloud and all that stuff, vendors are adapting, right? Not only vendors, but even the cloud providers are adapting, and things are changing. So you got to be very sure about all the changes that are happening. Today, everything is code, what we used to do, build servers and all that stuff. And it's now, you write a script, Terraform and all that stuff. And the server comes up and disappears, and then you have microservices, parts of code. And so you have to be very cognizant of this. And me personally, and I think many others are doing the same thing. That's why I'm looking at even startups, because when you work in a big organization, I mean, and I don't mean to downplay all the need for all these big vendors. They cannot just be nimble enough. I think that's where it's important to look at startups, because these startups are coming up with ideas that are, you say, oh my God, they're really ahead of the game. They're moving, and you just hope they're stable enough. And sometimes you give them a try.
And sir, I just moved over to our emerging technology study just because you had mentioned startups. And I'm curious, if you look over here, we already mentioned Sneak, right? There's one. We already
Yeah,
mentioned
Sneak is good.
Aqua. Yep.
Yeah.
There's a few others out here. I'm curious. Wiz, Orca Security. These are all ones that we're seeing a good amount of traction with. And I'm just curious from your perspective, sir, if any of these are on your radar, if you have any feedback.
Yeah, we are using some of them that you see here. And there are others that, are in the, we've already, it's probably not here. And then, and there are yet others that are, if you look at some of these companies, right, they've become slightly bigger. And I'll give you an example. And by the way, the intent is not to take one and say one is good or bad, right? Certain companies grew in a certain, like I spoke about Palo, right? You can use that for any other company, like a CASB provider. They grew up in the CASB world, and now suddenly the big word zero trust and all the other things came into play. And they say, oh, you know what? We can do that too, because we already have certain things already in play. We have an agent. We can see all the data, in line and so on and so forth. So these companies started expanding to do other things. Anyway, so that's what I have to say. Yeah, we do use a lot of this. And I look at stuff that is also still not yet there. So that's when you look at all these, you look at what's happening in the industry and you say, hey, disruptors, what are people doing? So